published in 1872, he boldly inserted an extra word at the start of the by now famous sentence on humans. Much. In The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, 1872, Darwin explored how humans and other animals manifest their feelings. He observed that all our expressions of emotion have equivalents in other animals, except one, which he called the most peculiar and the most human: blushing. The consensus on blushing in Darwin's time was that it revealed the moral and spiritual dimension that separated us from the beasts. The German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel had argued that the transparency of the human skin, unlike the lifeless sheath of other animals, allowed both the movement of the blood and the workings of the soul to be seen, so that we have in this outward manifestation, as it were, the real fount of life made visible. In his book, The Physiology or Mechanism of Blushing, 1839, Thomas Burgess, a physician and expert on acne at the Blenheim Street Dispensary in London, turned his attention to this beautiful and interesting phenomenon, which he called the lava of the heart. He began by dismissing the colonialist prejudice that savage peoples were incapable of blushing and thus naturally shameless. He had observed that one of his black servants had scar tissue on her cheek that went red whenever he told her off, and had seen African albinos exhibited in Paris who had blushed spectacularly, not just on the face, but on the ears, neck, and breasts. Blushing, he inferred, was a universal trait, displayed by everyone except very small children and congenital idiots. Burgess believed that since blushing was universal, it was evidence of intelligent design by our Creator. God had invented the blush so that our souls might display our moral lapses on our cheeks. Noting that Charlotte Corday, who murdered the French revolutionary Jean-Paul Marat, was said to have blushed after the guillotine had severed her head, whether she was embarrassed about killing Marat or being beheaded was unclear, Burgess wondered if this meant that the stimulus which excites the blush has a higher or more elevated origin than that assigned to the animal or instinctive passions. The flaw in Burgess's argument, as he himself conceded, was that timid people often blushed for no reason. Young people could seem abashed simply on entering a room or on being asked a routine question. He sidestepped this problem by inventing a new category: the false blush. Blushes in this category perverted the original intent of blushing and had no cause other than an extreme state of morbid sensibility. Darwin knew all this was nonsense. Blushing, he wrote, which makes the blusher to suffer and the beholder uncomfortable, without being of least service to either of them, had no moral or any other purpose. He noted cases of young women who had to undress in front of doctors blushing right down to their thighs, and found it extraordinary that the assumed opinion of others could excite such emotion and affect something so random as the circulation of the blood. Blushing, he decided, was caused by the strange human capacity for self-attention. Darwin was fascinated by this weird addendum to evolution, human self-consciousness, which meant that, aside from the involuntary act of blushing, we learned to stifle our most extreme emotional expressions. Although infants routinely screamed for long periods, he observed, adults were taught to suppress these instincts, to different degrees in different parts of the world. Some indigenous peoples wept copiously for trifling reasons. He had read of a New Zealand chief who cried like a baby because some sailors had spilled flour over his favourite cloak, and of Maori women, proud of being able to voluntarily shed tears and wail theatrically when they met to mourn the dead. In continental Europe, men also shed tears fairly freely, but Englishmen rarely cry except under the pressure of the acutest grief. Darwin put himself in this group. Only one thing for the rest of his life reduced him reliably to tears: a photograph of his beloved Annie, who had died at the age of 10, staring unblinkingly at the camera. At the end of the 18th century, foreign visitors to England had begun to note that its people were suffering.